Hey, good morning. So today I wanted to talk about what are really engineers, architects' roles in construction. So a lot of the time it's been the owner's advocate, the trusted advisor role for the owner, really, to help them design their building, to make sure that what they're doing makes sense, that it's feasible, that it's constructible, and the program and everything works for them, right? So, and especially true in renovation, and taking an existing building and reconfiguring it with new equipment or new layouts or additions, to analyze the existing system, seeing what's there, and then what could be done to either change out that equipment or add new. So that's been the historic role, and to find unique and different solutions for problems or challenges that the owner might be facing. So that might be, hey, we have a tight site, meaning that the size of land for the size of building that the program requires, and the program being how much space you need for what you're going to do, whether that be office space, classrooms, conference rooms, conference halls in some cases, a school, classrooms, whatever, apartment buildings, whatever it might be, that you don't have enough space, or the site is unique or oddly shaped, or whatever the case might be. There's some considerations to take into account, and that you need to then come up with a unique solution. Well, that's with the architect, the civil engineer, structural engineer, to make those unique challenges, or those I guess not unique challenges, but to overcome those unique challenges, and to come up with a solution that works and is cost effective, and that the owner can be happy with. So that's really, I find that the big role of the architect and engineer, trusted advisor, as well as making sure that things are installed correctly, as well as per design, that it's going to meet codes and standards, and that it's going to function properly. So really, I think overall that's the role of the engineer. What role we often get put in is, we're now the cost estimator, we're now the drawer of those documents. So we're not just designing it, but we're also drawing it, right? So we're putting our thoughts on paper, which I'm not saying doesn't need to happen, it does, it's a required piece of it, but it's interesting to me, I've spent a good portion of my career in it, but really the how the industry's evolved over time is going from pen and paper drawing to now computer drawing, and evolve and going from there. But really, we end up wearing more hats than we should, maybe, or maybe not. We should. We end up wearing a lot of hats in this industry. So whether it's now we're designing, but we're also managing projects, so we're not just designing, now we're looking at it in construction, so we're dealing with the construction aspect. Now we're also looking at costs, which I've been on a lot of projects recently, and that we've had to do some cost models at, and I have found that engineers, and I'm not immune to this, are just bad cost estimators. We're not in the business of it, we don't do it often enough, therefore we're not good at it, right? You become great at what you do often and repeatedly, and we've in the words of Brad Lee, been exposed to it, but we have not been trained in how to cost estimate, yet we're required to, which really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, yet that's what we do. So I find that we're wearing a bunch of hats, we're doing things that we're not trained in and or have no real expertise or knowledge in doing. This, I mean, as architects and engineers, especially on the cost side, that we don't bring in or have, estimators in-house to deal with a lot of this. We throw it to a construction manager or to a third party. I don't know why they don't just hire a cost estimator to help figure these things out, and constructability, and what things actually cost, so we might have better designs because of it, because we're actually looking at costs. So to me, it's really just interesting in how that goes about and that happens. It's just it's the way the industry's come up, but it's also why we're seeing a lot more design build, a lot more guaranteed max prices, because as an owner, they've been hit with all these change orders and change fees, and those costs can add up, and frankly, I don't blame them for wanting to reduce costs to not be hit with all these change orders when you said it would cost one thing and now it's costing more than that one thing. I just don't blame them. So I find it really interesting how the industry's come up, but with Revit, we now have all these tools to do better cost estimating up front, like you can do takeoffs up front, but nobody wants to admit that liability, yet we kind of have it already because either the counts aren't right on the contractor side, or we're making them repeat that work, whereas if we just put it on our drawings, they could bid from it easier, which whether they take that cost out or not and putting together bids is, I don't know, but it's either neither here nor there. But you could then, even if you don't give that information to the contractor, that in Revit you now have like device counts, right? Whether that be receptacle, lights, doors, drywall, whatever, you have all those counts that are like easily done, right? Where you can, count how many left-handed swing doors, right-handed swing doors, doors with a transom, doors without, square footage of glass, square footage of drywall, how much concrete you think it would take on the structural model, how much steel, do you need 1, 2, 20 W12s? Like, what are the counts of all this stuff? And by putting that all in and using that data and using it sooner, we can then come up with better cost models, better information, better decision matrices, everything that goes into a building. But no one uses Revit for the data that it's driven. Now we're starting to see a few startups and people actually come through and try to harness some of that data. But it's few and far between. There's so much potential in what we can do and how we can use that data and where the industry is going and headed, and really big data in general, which I know is a term that just gets thrown around a ton. But honestly, like, we have all this information, we're not using it. We should be using it. We should be using it to inform better decision making for our owners. Like, how often are energy models done? Not often. When are they done? At the end of a project. Does that really help anything? No, it just tells you what you're going to be using, instead of like, oh, if we turn the building 2 degrees, you'd save $10,000 a year, or whatever that dollar amount is. Like, little things like that, when done up front, done sooner in the project, they cost less and are more effective. So why we don't do that in construction, I don't know, whether it's laziness, whether we have too many projects and everyone's spread too thin and doesn't have the time, and they're just, rule of thumb in it because that's easy. I don't know, but I see a lot of that throughout the industry, where we're not making good decisions, we're not really orienting things properly, we're not truly thinking through design, and that the big buildings that we do applaud and find to be great are ones that the designers took a long time to actually think through design, like the Dallas Performing Arts Center or some of the Frank Gehry buildings. Like, there was time and thought put into what that was going to look like. They thought about fabrication, they thought about constructability, they thought about all these pieces that we just leave out. So I leave you with this: being spread thin does not help do work. You need to be focused. You need to do one thing at a time, even though that might be hard. I know I still struggle with it. But being focused, learning the craft, the trade, doing it one step at a time, whether that being an electrical engineer, you do power and you stay focused on power design, or you do lighting and then you stay focused on lighting design, or you do fire alarm and you stay focused on fire alarm till it's done, right? Until each of those pieces are done, then you can move on to the next. But so often we jump from one project to the next without really any regards or going back, and it causes a lot of cost and increase in construction dollars. So it's my little rant for the day on why I see so much design build and why it's so prevalent, and why I don't blame owners for going that way. Yet architects and engineers are still needed. We do provide value within the ecosystem. We do have a place that's still being sorted out, and some of it too is also to make sure the owner isn't screwed out of money as well, that things are built to their standards, that throughout the process, rules and guidelines are followed, that you can't just do what you want, that there's actual adherence to contracts, and make sure that things are installed the way that they were supposed to be per code, and designed. So we're that double check for the owner, to make sure that they get what they're actually paying for. So with that, I'm going to leave you, and we'll talk again soon.